Welcome to the Health Angle Podcast with Dr. Mike Headlee and Dr. Gordon Fimreite, where we'll be exploring different angles of health to achieve the best version of yourself. Now here's your hosts, Dr. Mike and Dr. Gordon.
Welcome everybody. I am Dr. Mike Headlee and with me is Dr. Gordon Fimreite. Welcome, Dr. Gordy.
Hi, Mike, and hi, everybody. Welcome to the Health Angle Podcast. Today's episode is vaping. Those are those e-cigarettes, and we're going to talk about risks or, what's the real story behind these. I lived in Chicago for a while, and I saw these stores popping up everywhere, it seemed like anyway. I moved down here south to Auburn, Alabama, and I still see a fair number of these popping up. They're around. So what we want to do today is really explore kind of what does it do? Is there health risks? How bad are they? And just all the details. And I think people are going to be pretty surprised, maybe in a shocking way. So welcome to the Health Angle Podcast.
Dr. Gordy, this one kind of hits home for me because my mom was a smoker, and I remember growing up as a kid sitting in the back seat of a car, and she was smoking, had the window open, but I'd always get secondhand smoke, and it really, really irritates me. If I have a number one pet peeve in life, it's secondhand smoke, and I'm really biased against it. And then vaping, I had two of my kids try vaping, and it scared me more than anything. They haven't had any shots or any antibiotics or anything. We eat mostly organic. And I found out they're vaping. And fortunately, they aren't right now. But it scares me based on what we're going to talk about right now. And it really bothers me. So this one hits home for me. And it's one of my biggest pet peeves. And I can't find 1 ounce of benefit for any cigarettes or vaping or anything. If you're a smoker and want to switch to vaping as a way to get off all of it, listen up what we're going to talk about, because I am so anti-vaping. I'm anti a few other things, but I'm massively anti-vaping.
What's really sad is the average age for this vaping or this e-cigarette. It's between the ages of 14 and 24. And I don't think people really know what they're getting themselves into. That brings me to my first part. I'm going to separate my sections into 3 parts. The first one is, why do people, why do they, especially the young, why do they resort to vaping and e-cigarettes, and are they safe? Well, I looked this up, and basically they got an appealing marketing and advertising strategy. Unfortunately, these e-cigarette companies, they use like rich, colorful, vibrant packaging. They make trending packaging, and then they use these social influencers. So if you get on like Instagram, Facebook, or even TikTok, I mean, the kids are thinking, wow, this is cool. This is fun. It's kind of fashionable. And they make it seem like it's harmless. But the reality is, it's not so much harmless. And they make it seem harmless by using like really fancy flavoring, like just as fruity and dessert flavors, which just gives it more appeal without thinking, maybe there's something a little bit more harmful. So, I mean, the bottom line is the younger audience thinks that vaping is harmless, and clearly, it is not. And what's really sad is the long-term effects as far as the scientific studies in vaping or these e-cigarettes. It hasn't been done. So that's a big deal right there. So the perceptions of that it's safe, well, there's just a lack of awareness of these risks. And they think that, you just mentioned this, that they think that vaping might be an alternative to smoking. But the reality is you're still inhaling this nicotine, which is highly addictive, and you're still getting these other chemicals. So there's just a real big misconception that you're just like inhaling this water vapor, and you're really not getting, you're getting nicotine a safe way, but that's really not the case. And then peer groups, I kind of made reference to this, but kids, since vaping is really popular between 14 and 24 years of age, there's a certain degree of status or pressure on these kids, and they just feel like they got to fit in and just kind of adapt to these norms of other kids that they like or look up to that might be doing this. And then, of course, there's a lack of education as far as health risk. Most people, unless you really dived into it like I did recently, and it sounds like you did too, Mike, when your kids started vaping, you don't really know enough about it. As a matter of fact, the image is, yeah, it's safe, it's healthy, but when you really dive into it, it's really not. I think there needs to be a critical look at that. And then there's also a perception that the products that they make that are non-nicotine, they make those sound like they're healthy. And again, you're still exposed to all these chemicals, which can be very harmful, and we don't even know the long-term effects. And then the perception of some kids will go, well, I just do it short term. I'm not going to do it very long. They believe that they just get off it whenever they want. But little do they know that nicotine is a very highly addictive substance, and that becomes a real problem, especially when they're actually trying to quit. And then the last thing I just want to point out in this section is there's really limited regulations. It's relatively new, and the oversight over this industry, it's there, but it's lacking depending on where you're at. Like, for example, the e-cigarettes, the advertising, they don't really clearly state out the risks. And if they do, they're really buried in the small text. So it's really not there. So back to you. What do you think, Mike?
Yeah, I'm going to talk about vaping's hidden dangers. They're way more harmful than you think. It's linked to brain, artery, and lung damage. And then vaping causes more DNA damage than regular cigarettes. So I'm going to start off with some pretty bad stuff, but then I'm going to talk about tips to making quitting easier as my final piece. The reason why vaping is so horrible, it damages your blood vessel function. Even in the absence of nicotine, you said some have nicotine, some don't, but it reduces blood flow and it just decreases the oxygen in our veins. And they contain harmful chemicals besides nicotine, such as lead, nickel, and formaldehyde. Right? They've removed formaldehyde from all old schools and buildings and stuff, but now we're putting it into young kids' lungs. It causes oxidative stress, and I know we've mentioned that a lot on different podcasts. And inflammation, we've talked a lot about how to reduce inflammation naturally. It triggers an impaired vascular function. The misconception about vaping, Dr. Gordy, it's a safe alternative to smoking. That's one of the biggest misconceptions, because both nicotine and non-nicotine vaping just causes impaired vascular function. There's a disease called EVALI, EVALI. It's a severe respiratory condition linked to vaping, and it remains a significant health concern, with ongoing cases highlighted the need for improved regular measures and public health strategies. So the presence of toxic chemicals in e-cigs, vapor causes acute lung injury and systemic effects on multiple organs, emphasizing the need for further research. One of the things too, if you're walking behind people or if you're at a concert or you're an outdoor venue or something, the secondhand part of that is just as damaging as just sucking it in. And, vaping's linked to brain, artery, and lung damage. Vaping also harms heart health, linked to increase in blood pressure and arterial stiffness. The average vape pod contains as much nicotine as 20 cigarettes, and some kids go through a couple of those a day. So 20 to 40 cigarettes in a day. And we've talked about bad fats and bad oils and seed oils. Well, think about heating up a vapor and oil, and now it's going into your lungs and coating your lungs, and then it gets into your brain and your liver and all of our arteries. And I mean, it's not like taking a window cleaner and just cleaning off your computer screen or your windows and doing some spring cleaning. You can't just clean out your lungs overnight. You can't just clean out the brain fog overnight. You can't clean out your arteries just like that when you quit. And so heating up those bad oils, it is poison, Dr. Gordy. It is poison. I'm just adamant. I mean, I almost went to some of the vape stores in this town and tried to shut them down or whatever. I'm that serious about it. My last two employees, guess what they did? I didn't know that on the interview. They vaped.
Wow.
That's not the reason they aren't with me now, but geez, they go, if one said, can I take a vape break now? Nope, that's not allowed. I don't know if that, no, you can't take a vape break. No, you can't go outside and vape. No. Thanks for asking though.
And you're actually helping her by doing
Yeah,
that too.
yes. So it's like she didn't thank me, but I helped her. So
Yeah,
back
that's
to you.
great.
Back to you.
We have a lot of parents that might be watching this, or maybe friends or a family member or somebody that does these e-cigarettes or vaping. And so I thought, well, this will be interesting. What are the first symptoms of vaping? And at what age do most have these types of symptoms? So, and of course, I already mentioned the 14 to 24-year-olds. This is the most common area, and they may be experiencing their first symptoms during their first episode of vaping. So, first symptom. So, in other words, parents or friends or family, if you see any of these symptoms and you know that they're vaping, you might want to have an intervention here. So, first is coughing or throat irritation. Why? Because there's chemicals such as propylene glycol or glycerine that can irritate the throat and airways. And it's not uncommon, like I said, for the first time they're vaping, and even the first session or two that they experience in that type of symptom. Second symptom is dry mouth or throat. Vaping can cause dehydration in the mouth and throat, mostly because of the effects, the chemical effects of propylene glycol. And the third thing is shortness of breath or wheezing. The lungs are exposed to this vapor, which contains these chemicals such as formaldehyde or acetaldehyde. And for some people, this can cause breathing issues or make asthma symptoms even worse. The fourth symptom is dizziness or lightheadedness. Nicotine, like I said earlier, it's a stimulant, and nicotine can cause an increase in heart rate and blood pressure. The next one, number 5, is headaches. Nicotine and other chemicals in the vape liquid can actually cause headaches, particularly those that are really sensitive to nicotine. Number 6 is nausea and vomiting. If you're not used to nicotine, you may experience this with nicotine because too much too quickly can absolutely lead to nausea and vomiting. Number 7 is increased heart rate or palpitations. And this is also nicotine, it's stimulant. It increases the heart rate, and people can get the feeling of anxiety or discomfort. And then number 8 is mild chest tightness or discomfort. So those are 8 symptoms that if you know someone, you have a kid, and you know that they're smoking or doing the vaping, something to be really close and in tune to. And then, of course, other risks, lung damage. You had mentioned this, Mike, irritation to the lungs. There's nicotine addiction. We just talked about cardiovascular issues, respiratory problems. Studies show that this can cause problems such as asthma or even bronchitis. And then there's potential popcorn lung. And this is from the diacetyl, and this is a chemical linked to bronchiolitis obliterans, or popcorn lungs, known for short, which can damage the airway. And that can be permanent. You can't reverse it. And that is sad. And then the effects on the lungs. You know, some of these people start 14 years all the way to 24. Some of them are still developing brain development, and it can lead to like attention problems, learning problems, memory issues. So not good. And then, of course, the long-term health benefits. Just talked about this. We really haven't studied them. So we really don't know. So really, I think there needs to be some critical look into these e-cigarettes and vaping, and we'll see what Kennedy does directing the entire entity of health in America. It'll be kind of exciting to see. So back to you, Mike.
Yeah, I'm kind of curious how that's all going to work out. I see a trend though now with these nicotine pouches, and I don't know what that's all about. That's not like chewing tobacco, because I know Copenhagen and they've had pouches, but now they almost have these nicotine pouches. I don't know if that's just a non-vape type thing or not. I haven't studied that a lot. Have you looked into that, Gordy, or seen
No,
people with that?
I
Yeah.
haven't really. No.
I've seen people with that though, and so they probably think it's better than chewing tobacco, but again, it's still chemicals right into your mucous membranes and gum lines. So tomorrow, Dr. Gordy, me and my wife are going to go to my daughter's a senior. We're going to go to teachers conference, I think for the second last time. And so they always have posters up when you walk in the school. and they'll show different examples of vaping and their USB drive jump drives. They look like pens and pencils, and they don't look like e-cigs. They don't look like cigarettes. They're markers and what like I was shocked at how they disguise those and the
So,
flavors and the
so to be
colors.
clear, Dr. Mike, they're endorsing these vaping and e-cigarettes, or is it a campaign against them?
Of course, against, they're just saying what to look
Okay,
for in your kid's backpack or in their
right.
pencil case or what, it's like, oh, you see just pens and markers and USB drives, but you don't even think twice about it. It's just a stack of pencils over there or pens, and it's their jump drive for their laptop. And
Yeah.
these companies disguise it because they know it's bad and evil and wrong.
Wow.
Um, so my last little bit before I talk about how tips to help quit with these is more than 2.5 million youth use vaping products, including 14.1% of high school students, 3.3% of middle school students. Most use flavored e-cigarettes. Fruit flavors are the most popular, followed by candy and dessert flavors. And so that's, I kind of notice the smells. I have fortunately, I have a good sense of smell. And so I go, wow, why is this, does this, I know cigarettes smell because that's how I grew up smelling secondhand smoke, but I like this, what's this fruity smell? What is this all about? Flavored e-cigs appear to be the most harmful. Research shows vaping with mango or mint flavored pods increase the inflammatory process in multiple organ systems, with the most striking changes happening in the brain, which may contribute to behavior changes and mood disorders. And I like what you said too about dry mouth and coughing and different things and headaches and but behavior changes and mood disorders. So you really got to watch out for stuff like that. So e-cigs vapor disable the ability of the macrophages. Macrophages simplified is they attach bad things into that are in our body. So e-cigarettes vapors disable the ability of our macrophages to engulf bacteria and protect our lungs. And so this type of damage increases lung cell vulnerability to just common things like dust, bacteria, and other allergens. So it also increases our risk of chronic obstructive pulmonary disease. And that's just horrible because we need to have our defenses up for dust and dirt and dander and allergens and stuff they spray in the air and all that kind of stuff. So single-use and refillable vaping cartridges have been found to contain fungal contaminants also. And that's associated with asthma and COPD and reduced lung function and inflammatory processes of the lung. So lastly, one of the largest ever studies conducted on health effects of vaping found that adult e-cigs had a significant higher chance of heart disease and mental health problems than non-smokers. So what what I always thought when they first came out, I thought, wow, the concept when I first heard of it, oh, good. Now they're going to have people vape or use e-cigs for a few months instead of gum or meds or a patch, and then nobody will smoke anymore. I thought that was the coolest thing ever. But now these young kids, 14 to 24, that were most of them like cigarette smoke among that age group is the lowest it's been in many, many years, which is really cool. But most of those kids and athletes and everything else, I have people coming in my office, Dr. Gordy, and say, oh, geez, half the team here and all these friends are vaping and they found this and it's whatever. It's just rampant at parties and things. Most of those kids wouldn't touch a cigarette. Like you and I never, I mean, I took a puff on a cigarette and gagged so bad and almost threw up. So, I mean, most of those kids wouldn't be smoking. But now they're going to try this fruity flavor thing, and oh, that's pretty cool. And that's not even talking about the marijuana type vapes and all that other stuff. So I'm just passionate about how destructive it is to your cells. And we talk about cellular health. We talked about inflammation. We talk about mitochondria. We talk about all these things. And if you want to ruin your health the fastest, especially in a young person, give them a stack full of vapes and they'll just wreck their health in a hurry. And I'm joking, obviously. So I'm kind of a little bit angry and down on this, but it's a serious health problem. And hopefully we have some leadership, yeah, that is going to really help put a dent into this.
Yeah, I hope so too. I wrote down, I was just thinking about this. If I had kids or a family member or friend who was actually did vaping regularly, um, I mean, how would I feel? What would I do? How would I present to get them sidetracked to a different direction? And I think going over these next 15 basically toxic chemicals that are in vaping or these e-cigarettes would do a lot. So this might sound a little boring and some of these words are hard to say, but I'm going to go through 15, and this is my last section, Mike. I'm going to go as quickly as I can, but I'm going to tell you why. So the first one is nicotine, and we already talked about this, really highly addictive. And that alone can increase your heart rate and your blood pressure, and it can also affect brain development in the young. Not good. Formaldehyde, I mean, that's almost like a cleaning product. It's a carcinogen. In other words, it's cancer causing, especially in the lungs and the throat. Acetylleithin, this is a human carcinogen, again, a cancer causing agent. Acrolein, this is highly toxic to the respiratory system, your lungs, and it can cause lung damage, wheezing, coughing, and irritation to the eyes and throat. Diacetyl, this is known for like the popcorn lungs that we just talked about, and it can damage your ability to breathe, and it also can lead to what you were just talking about, the chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, COPD. There's another component called propylene glycol or glycerin, and this is an irritant to the respiratory system. It can make asthma and bronchitis even worse. And then benzylene, this is cancer causing leukemia and other cancers, reproductive harm, and immune system suppression. Number 8 is heavy metals such as lead, cadmium, and nickel. Toxic to your kidneys and your liver. These are what get rid of whenever you eat something bad or you breathe something bad, your detoxifying organs are the kidney and liver. Well, this component, these heavy metals are bad for those two components as well as the nervous system. And it's been also linked to cancer as well. The sad part is this can accumulate in the body and over time cause long-term health problems, which haven't even been studied yet. Isoprene, this is known for liver damage, and it's also cancer causing, respiratory issues as well, nerve damage. Toluene, this is nerve damage again, liver problems, kidney damage, headaches, dizziness. Ethanol, really an irritant to the eyes and the nose, the throat, can cause dizziness and nausea. And of course, chronic exposure can lead to liver and nervous system problems. N, cancer causing, it's a carcinogen, increases cancer, particularly in the lungs and also the digestive system. And then there's ultrafine particles, which can go deep within the lungs, cause inflammation, oxidative stress, increase risk to your respiratory system. And of course, there's a risk of heart disease as well. Hydrogen cyanide, this is a potent poison that interferes with oxygen use. We need to breathe. We need that oxygen. Every cell, tissue, and organ in our body needs oxygen. If we're getting that chemical, that can lead to symptoms such as dizziness, nausea, headaches, and severe cases, even death. And number 15 is formaldehyde dimethyl acetal. And this is an irritant to the eyes and the skin and respiratory tract. So if that isn't enough to scare people, I don't know what is, because you saw there's a lot of carcinogens in there, a lot of irritants to your lungs and your lung capacity, as well as your heart function, your cardiovascular function. So not good. And even there's a government website called the National Institute of Health. You can go onto their website, nih.gov, type in vaping, the health effects or negative effects of vaping or e-cigarettes, and you'll get some studies. And I wrote down four. I don't have to read them all, but here's just a title or two. Here's some of the subjects on it. Here it is. NIH-funded studies on vaping and blood vessels, damages of blood vessels. And then e-cigarettes, health harm, awareness, and discouragement. Again, studies on the heart problems and increased blood rate. And then e-cigarettes and health outcomes. And again, scientific studies showing cardiovascular and respiratory problems. So a lot of stuff out there, Dr. Mike, a lot of stuff that people can look into. Again, I'm going to just reference that website once again. It's a government website, the National Institute of Health. You can Google that or do a search engine on that, or you can put nih.gov and then do your searches. So back to you, Mike.
Yeah, when I was in high school, they had a group that got started, Mothers Against Drunk Driving, MADD. Maybe one in my future endeavors, I'll do DAV, Dad Against Vaping. We'll see. We'll see if
Yeah.
if our new leadership doesn't do anything
I got a
about
question,
it.
Dr. Mike. When your kids started to vape, did you have any kind of intervention, or did you just kind of let them go through their thing, or how did you handle it
Yeah,
as
we
a parent?
went hardcore, restricting withdrawal symptoms, all that kind of stuff.
Sometimes
Um,
tough love is the best.
yeah, you just nope, done. But I'm going to go through some tips for making quitting easier. One of my things for practice members when they want to get off cigarettes or sugars or anything like that, I'm a huge, huge fan of 4 days in a row of sauna, taking activated charcoal. Because if you can go really hardcore in a long sauna and sweat out some toxins, take some activated charcoal is will mop up some of the toxins. It's a binder, binds up toxins when you're in the sauna and sweating, and so just get some of that stuff out faster. Take Epsom salt bath as a third thing, and then just hydrate. It really gets you over the cravings and the junk and the toxins quite a bit faster. Um, so smokers are addicted to nicotine. There's other chemicals in there as well, but when trying to stop smoking, nicotine withdrawal symptoms can trigger feelings of anger and irritation, trouble thinking, and tobacco cravings. There's a study in 2011, Dr. Gordy, evaluating how mindfulness training may help increase potential success of smoking cessation and vaping cessation. So after twice weekly mindfulness training treatments for 4 weeks, which that's not a lot in my opinion, study participants had an increased rate of reduction in cigarettes compared to those who received the American Lung Association Freedom from Smoking program. This was maintained during a 17-week follow-up, which led to research to conclude that mindfulness training may have better benefits greater than those associated with the current standard treatment for smoking cessation. So a second analysis demonstrated 25% of the participants using mindfulness training remained smoke-free for more than 4 months as compared to 13% of those who use the usual care method. So mindfulness training is like cognitive behavioral therapy in terms of underlying mechanisms, and you can go see counselors for that or any addictive type process. In addition to practicing mindfulness, Gordy, tell me if you agree. I believe that quitting becomes easier when you get healthy first. Exercise is an important part of the plan. We've talked about that. Research shows people who engage in regular strength training doubled their success rate at quitting smoking as compared to those who don't exercise. So I thought that was really, really cool. And I believe in if you want to get off Diet Coke, vaping, you want to get off any kind of addiction, I think you need to add something to your life as well, like the exercise or saunas or healthy eating is another crucial factor, improving your health and strengthening your ability to quit. Finally, find a health emotional outlet. We've talked about that too, stress relief, parks, walking, exercise, just being out in nature, go to the park. Many people use exercise, meditation, relaxation techniques, and I've recommended in the past emotional freedom technique. You can go to YouTube emotional freedom technique for quitting smoking or vaping and just take the 10-minute video and it will walk you through if you're feeling craving and stress and anxiety and irritability, because you can get over this just like a lot of people do, and a lot of people have done. And like if you can get over quit smoking and vaping, you can basically do anything because it is quite addictive. But just like any other habit, you just gotta bite the bullet and do it. And it is not a long-term solution for anybody. If you think you're gonna get off cigarettes and turn to vaping. If you do it, you better think it's short term, and you better get off that short term too, because that's not a long term strategy for stress relief and relaxation and casual. Go have a few beers and vapes with your friends. No, my friends, that's horrible. So that's all I have, Gordy. So I finish up by asking our audience, what's your number one takeaway that you can have a conversation at work? What do you think of vaping? Have you researched that? And what's your number one takeaway that you can have a conversation about it and point someone in the right direction to try to help them? Because gosh, it's a really big deal. And number two, and last thing is, what's your number one action step? Is it to learn more about it to help other people? Is it to really reach out for help instead of going cold turkey if you need help? Or do you just need to have a conversation with a family member or a neighbor or your best friend and say, hey, how long you been vaping? What, have you ever looked at what's in that stuff? Or what, I mean, I'm hanging out with you a lot. And these crazy chiropractors say that secondhand vape is just as bad and toxic. All these 15 chemicals in there. It's like that sounds like poison. I don't know if I want to die early, and I don't want you to die early. So, what's your number one takeaway? What's your number one action step that you can take starting today? And it's kind of a more serious, down topic for me because it hits home for me instead of uplifting and positive and do this and improve your life. But this can truly improve a lot of people's life if you help them stop vaping.
Yeah, and I think the tips that you gave, Mike, is very helpful. And I think most people kind of intuitively and instinctively, if they're on a healthy journey, a healthy lifestyle where they're exercising, they're eating the right foods, they're getting their rest, they're reducing their stress, et cetera, I think most people intuitively feel something's not quite right about these e-cigarettes or vaping. So I think people stay clear. But hey, if you haven't already, please subscribe to our podcast. Please click the like. We have a notification bell too. You can click that for upcoming podcasts. So we'll have another addition to our podcast next week. So be sure to stay tuned. So until then, thanks for joining us on the Health Angle Podcast.
Thank you for joining us on the Health Angle Podcast. Please subscribe to our channel and catch us for our next episode.